Okay, we are going to classify real numbers. I want you to look at page 15. On the bottom of your page 15, I gave you a couple of numbers for us to decide what category in the real number system does each number fall in, okay? Now we know all numbers are real unless the number has 0 on the denominator. Then it cannot be a real number, okay? That's the only time it cannot be a real number. Everything else is real. So what I want to do is I want to look at each one of these and decide what category does it fall underneath. All right. So -1, we know -1 is an integer. Okay. So I know right away that -1 is an integer. So I'm going to write the word integer. But I know if he's an integer, then he's also everything in the real number system above him. So if we look above, we see also if he's an integer, he is a rational number as well. So he's also rational. And I've told you over and over again that all numbers are real. So if he's an integer, he's rational, he's also real. Okay? That's where -1 falls in. Okay? That's the categories. The next one we want to look at is the fraction 1/3. My 3 doesn't look so great. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, so 1/3. It's a fraction. If I look over here, I do have a -1/3 and I also have 5/7. So I know my fractions fall in that rational number. If you do see the integers, there is a -10/5, but I can solve -10/5 and that becomes a -2. So I know that it's not an integer, so the fractions are all rational numbers. So I'm going to go right here and write rational. But remember, if he's rational, he's also what? Real. All right, let's look at the next one, square root of 5. If I'm not sure if square root of 5 is a perfect square, I can always go back to my foldable on page 13, I think it's 11 or 13, with our perfect squares. Do I see the square root of 5 here? I do not. Because he's not a perfect square, then he falls under the irrational number part. Remember, that means that he's going to be a non-terminating, non-repeating decimal. So square root of 5 is an irrational number because he's not a perfect square. Again, if he's irrational, he's also real. All right, let's look at our -7.34. Well, he's a negative number, but notice in the integer section for the negatives, I don't have any decimals. So I look again and I do see decimals in the rational numbers, so I'm going to classify him as rational. Remember, again, if they're rational, he is also real. All right. Let's look at the next one, the number 0. Well, I look in counting numbers, I don't see a 0, but in the whole numbers it says counting numbers and 0. So I know first off that the number 0 is a whole number. Then remember what I told you, if he's the whole number, then he's also going to be everything above him. So if he's whole, he's also an integer. He's also rational. And lastly, what did I keep telling you guys? He is real. All right, let's look at the next one, the number 1. Well, clearly I see natural number, counting number, the number 1. So number 1 is a natural. And what did I tell you? Everything now above him is the number 1. So he's natural, he's whole, he's an integer, he's rational, and of course, last but not least, he is real. Okay? Pi. Pi, I've shown you guys a picture of pi. It goes on and on and on. I know that I told you he's a non-terminating, non-repeating decimal. To us, he's the most famous irrational number. So again, he's irrational, but he's also real. Okay? Now, the square root of 100/25. I want to see first, can I solve that before I go on? So I look over here. The square root of 100/25, this can be solved. You can break it down like so. 100, square root of 100, and the square root of 25. The square root of 100, if I look, is 10. The square root of 25, if I look, is 5. And then I'm looking, wow, this is an improper fraction. I wonder, can I solve? What is 10 divided by 5? It is 2. All right, so the number 2, where do I see the number 2 at on my real number system Venn diagram? I can see that the number 2 is a counting number. So square root of 100 over 25 is natural. Okay, if he's natural, he's also whole. If he's whole, then he's also an integer. If he's an integer, he's rational. And last but not least, he is real. Remember, the only time that it does not fall in the real number system is if I see a number with a 0 in the denominator. Something like maybe 6 over 0. That was in your notes. Okay? This is not a real number. Okay? If you have any questions, just come and ask me. Otherwise, go ahead and place all this inside your IMN on pages 14 and 15.